Namaste, beautiful women. Welcome. So this live is called Sacred Relationship. Sacred Relationship. And I'm speaking to this theme, which is very, very dear to my heart, and which is a huge central pillar of my life and my work, and has been for the last 16 or 17 years now. Because really Tantra and yoga are fundamentally about union, unification, oneness, and the sanctity of relationship with self, with divine, and with one another. So this theme is really what my life has become utterly devoted to. The more that I've dived into Tantra and yoga, the more this whole sphere of bringing the sacred and the divine into the way I relate with myself and with all others and with everything is kind of crucial. And I just want to say that this theme, sacred relationship, is the second workshop in the second semester of my Living Shakti Awake, Bringing Tantra to Life program that is kicking off this year, January 2022, and warmly welcome. So I'm really enjoying taking you through these themes of each of the workshops in the program, and yet also these lives are a transmission in and of themselves, you know, so welcome and enjoy and bring your feedback and questions. And let's begin. So, you know, when I start my videos and when I end my videos, I usually do the sign of Namaste. I'm just looking in there because I can see my hands. You know, I've got these really curvy fingers. I'm sure I must have been like a Thai dancer in a former life, because that's how my fingers are. They don't go straight. That's just my fingers' natural shape. So when I do the Namaste, it always looks really funny to me. But you know, this gesture of bringing left and right palms together, left and right sides of the body, right, is a gesture of union, of unification, literally bringing left feminine, right masculine together, left and right sides of the body, the brain, our energy, our masculine and feminine are unified when we do this. And then we take the hands and the thumbs to rest upon the sternum, and right behind the sternum is our heart chakra. So we're making this gesture of unification, of oneness, of bringing everything together in the heart. The heart is there right between above and below, the sky and the earth, the higher centers, the lower centers. And when I say lower centers, that doesn't mean they are less than, right? So this is a really meaningful gesture. It's not something I do that's just an empty repetition of something I've learned. When I make this gesture, I feel the meaning of it in my body and in my energy and in my heart. Yeah, so I bring together, I unify, I unite, above, below, left and right, masculine and feminine, within my own body, within my own energy field, within my own being. And in that gesture of unification, I then bow to you. I bow to you. You as an individual, you as a collective. And the words that come with that are Namaste, which translated into, you know, the Western world comes across as the expression of the divine in me bows to the divine in you. The divine in me bows to the divine in you. So it's a gesture of recognition of our oneness. It's a gesture of recognition that we are each a unique spark of God. And in that greeting, we recognize that. And that's why when you go to a Tantra workshop, pretty often you'll begin and end with this gesture of meeting the person or the people that you are engaging in practice with, because it means the divine in me bows to the divine in you. And it's really important to set that intention of bringing the sacred into our relating and our meeting. And that awareness and that gesture and that intention is so often missing in our everyday interactions. We forget. I forget. You forget. We all forget. I'm not saying this to judge anybody or make anybody wrong, but I am inviting us all to remember this gesture and to reintroduce this gesture into our relating. Sacred relationship in the workshop that I'm going to be teaching and in the way that I bring it through isn't just about man and woman or any other combination of romantic and sexual relationship. It's about all relationships. It's about every relationship. It's about every single person that we interact with in our lives. So really, you could say, and I have said this before, life is pretty much defined by the quality, the caliber, the nature of our relationships. We cannot exist without relationship. Everything that we do and be in the world hinges upon relationship. Professional relationships, community relationships, family relationships, romantic and sexual relationship. It's the current of life. That's why it's so, so important. And the intention and the awareness that we bring to our relating has the power to change everything. So, for example, let's make it really concrete, because that's what this course is about, bringing Tantra to life. Yeah? So everything that's going on right now in the political sphere and the social sphere, right? With the big themes are around health and all of that stuff. These are huge issues. And the way that we show up in our relating with others around this is going to make a huge difference to the outcomes of this situation. It's going to make a huge difference to how we feel, how others feel, to what unfolds, how we show up, and the quality of awareness, respect, dignity, sovereignty that we bring into our relating, particularly with those who have a different perspective to us, with those who trigger us, with those who disagree with us, with those who may call us names and point the fingers. That's when it's really, really crucial. Just going to take stock for a moment and pause. We have the power, basically, to create peace in the world, to create love in the world, to create harmony in the world, or not. And that very much hinges upon our relating. And every relationship begins, of course, with the relationship with self, right? So I'm just going to turn my page, even though I'm not really looking at my notes, just because in case I forget something. Everything starts with the relationship to yourself. So, for example, I was running late for this live today because I taught a private yoga class from 9 to 10. And I just scheduled the call today for 10, and then I realized there's no way I'm going to make that. So rather than pushing myself to rush around like a loony, I recognized I needed to eat. I recognized I needed to drink some tea. I've still got my tea here. So I changed the time of the life to accommodate my needs, to take care of myself. In the past, I would have pushed myself to rush and to get a little bit stressed running up and down, finding the plugs for my phone and my computer and all that stuff. These days, the relationship I have with myself is different, and I recognize I have these needs, I'm going to take care of these needs, and I'm going to put that first before showing up on the time that I originally said I would, right? That's my relationship with myself. How I relate to myself will totally affect how I relate with others, because if I'm willing to give that care and attention to myself, that respect to myself, then I'm much more likely to be giving that to others and understanding when somebody else is late for a meeting with me and just says, I'm running late because da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever, rather than judging them. It's just a very concrete example. So, where to go with this? The nature of our relationship with ourselves and with ourself, so S, small s, big S, determines everything, really. And I know it's a very, what's the word? It's very overused, but I guess it's used because there's a truth in it when we say that everybody is a mirror for us. That phrase can be misused against the self, but it can also be very useful as something to remember in terms of the way we move through life in our relating. So the way that it can be used against the self is, for example, I remember hosting a workshop for couples around sacred relationship and the shadows and the wounds that arise. And one woman had the experience of being in relationship with a narcissist, or that was how she experienced it. So then that phrase, everybody is a mirror for you, she took against herself, saying, oh, that must mean that I'm a narcissist too. And in that case, that's not really the reflection that I was seeing, or that made sense. So it's not necessarily, you know, somebody's treating me like shit, therefore I treat other people like shit. It's not necessarily that, but there is always, without fail, a reflection of a quality or shadow within you that you are either turning in towards yourself or out towards others, because otherwise that pairing, that matching would not be active and alive and resonant. So again, let me give you super concrete examples from my own life. I've been in a relationship with a narcissist, and that wasn't highlighting my narcissistic qualities, although I'm happy to admit that I have, you know, I'm not a narcissist, but I think every human being can have behaviors that occasionally go towards that spectrum. So I'm sure that there are sometimes ways in which I can become a bit like that. But what that primarily highlighted for me was my codependency, my lack of boundaries, my low self-worth. So that was what that was highlighting for me, that I wasn't setting boundaries, that I wasn't saying no, that I was putting his needs and desires to my own detriment, to my own loss, to my own, in a way, remaining in that dynamic was self-abuse, right? So that's what that highlighted for me. And at the very root, that highlighted for me an absence of self-love. And it was so confronting, because I'd already come far enough in my journey to recognize that there is nobody to blame. You know, when I started off on this path, I was very much drawn to the path of Tantra and sacred relating because of my own difficulties and challenges in relating, which have their roots right back in my parents' relationship, which was archetypally like the dysfunctional and immature masculine and feminine of the patriarchal system. My parents lived that to a T. And so that set up certain wounds and traumas and conditionings in me that then determined, and no, didn't fully determine, but influenced very much the way I related. And moving through multiple relationships and then getting to a point where my second marriage fell apart, that was the catalyst for my awakening journey. So out of that loss, out of that difficulty, out of that not feeling met in relationship, struggling to communicate in relationship, feeling like we were on completely different tracks, out of that difficulty and out of that challenge was born my deep desire to understand and to heal. And that was what took me onto the path of Tantra and of yoga and of authentic relationship, which then became, you know, my world in terms of what I studied and what I was teaching and what I was experiencing. Even as if you'd have been watching from the outside, it certainly wouldn't have looked like I had mastered any of it. And because I hadn't, I really hadn't. I wouldn't say I have still. But in making that choice, in stepping into the path of conscious relating, of sacred sexuality, then I began to be able to bring a new level of awareness to my actions and behaviors, even if I wasn't immediately able to do that in the moment. Because so many of our patterns and conditionings are so deep-rooted that we are, of course, a lot of the time acting and reacting unconsciously based on the wounds and traumas of our childhood and even of our, you know, our ancestors. So our past that is inherited and still coded into our DNA. You know, I'm very certain, for example, that my father's bully and tyrant and narcissist elements stem from, for example, his father's experience of profound trauma in the First World War, seeing bodies blown to bits, having to pick up body parts and put them on a stretcher and carry them back. This and much worse he witnessed, and that trauma impacted how he parented, impacted my father, impacted me, right? So this stuff goes back and comes through the lineage, even if we're completely unaware of it. So that was what shaped me, and so you will be shaped too. And when you begin to step onto this path of awakening and Tantra, all of this will begin to come into the light from the shadows, come into the light from the dark, will become seen in order to be witnessed, in order to be felt, in order to be loved, in order to be reintegrated and returned home. Because the path of Tantra, ultimately the path of awakening, ultimately is a path of self-realization. What that means is I remember I am one with God. I remember I am source consciousness, while I'm still living life as a human being with a unique personality, with a unique body, with a unique soul expression that is only ever going to exist this one time. That's what this is all about. And so every single soul, every single human being that we meet on this beautiful journey that we've been gifted is there to support our recognition of that. You know, I remember speaking quite recently with one of my dear friends, Andre, who's a longtime friend, who's a teacher of meditation, and you know, we've known each other really, really well. We've known each other for a long time. And I was just sharing with him how challenging I was finding it at that point in time, relating with my dad, who was going through a really difficult time, and because of that was very challenging to be around, in that he was being aggressive, he was being bullying, being dogmatic, being narcissistic, and it was really triggering me. And despite all of my tools and all of my awareness, you know, I was getting super triggered to the point of feeling violent. And, you know, really, really feeling that violent response within me, which wanted to hit out, or, you know, verbally hit out, or even physically hit out, to defend myself against what felt like an attack, right? And he said, "Oh, I love your dad. I love your dad. Isn't he amazing?" And of course he's totally right, and it was great because it made me laugh. Because right there, you know, in that one who is able to get right down to your nitty-gritty, there's the gift in that, because that is the one who is there to really, really push your buttons and awaken you to the next level. Just like my narcissistic ex did, you know, that encounter with that narcissist took me a level deeper in self-awareness and self-love, like in a big way. So even though it was a horrendous experience, now I'm able to bow to him sincerely, as a soul, you know, who has come to earth with a specific purpose himself, and say thank you for waking me up to the fact that I really didn't love myself, and I was allowing myself to be treated this way. You know, thank you for allowing me to build in love, in sincerity, in authenticity, in deeper connection with divine, and learn even more how to walk through life as a sovereign woman. Same with my dad. You know, I took that urge within me and meditated with it deeply, deeply, and allowed and accepted everything that arose in me. I allowed and I accepted. I didn't hide any of that darkness. I allowed it, I accepted it, I loved it, I welcomed it, I felt it, didn't act upon it, and processed and meditated. It was hard. I'm not saying this was easy. It was hard. I went, you know, it took me through a whole journey, but with the support also of a mentor, what was born of that was a deeper embodiment of my own power, true power, authentic power, not fake power, but a true embodied sense of power within me as a being, and the understanding that that impulse arose from a conditioned response of disempowerment from a long time ago. And then from that grew and returned compassion in my heart for my father, you know, so it moved us both on, it expanded and grew me, and the nature of our relationship shifted again. So it's always, always about us being able to meet and process and feel and allow whatever is triggered within us for our own expansion. We don't do it for anybody else. We don't do it to make something happen. But the reality I know is that as we integrate, as we meet, as we love, as we feel, as we allow ourselves to go through the complete process with these difficult emotions and feelings and triggers and traumas, so the outer inevitably changes. And again, I want to bring us back to what's happening in the world right now, you know, this time of potent awakening all around us, surging up. It's happening, we can't stop it. And the way we relate to this and to one another within this is going to be fundamental to what we create for the future. And so, yeah, there are going to be people who trigger the shit out of us. And how are we going to respond to that? For the highest good of all, and in the recognition that that person is a spark of God, even if they don't recognize it, and that they are there with a purpose for your soul's evolution. Ultimately, what I believe is that relationship is a crucible for awakening, not a crucifixion, a crucible. Where else do we get triggered? As triggered as in relationship, where else are we given this beautiful opportunity to see ourselves and recognize something about ourselves and to grow and to expand? You know, if we lived in isolation from everybody else and it was all just happy, smiley, you know, where would the growth come from? Where would the catalyst, where would the itch come from? Where would the, you know, I talk a lot about the pearl. Where would the sand in the oyster come from to make the pearl if there wasn't some irritation, something rubbing, something irritating to catalyze growth and unfolding into the true beauty of our true nature? Which, yes, then when we are experiencing it as that is unconditional love, is peace, is harmony, is coexistence, is co-creation. But in order to create this beautiful world that we all want, we have to have cultivated the skills to be that, to live that, to do that. It's no good saying, oh, you know, I'm dreaming of this heaven on earth. I'm dreaming of this beautiful new earth where everybody's at peace and there's no conflict and, you know, we're in harmony with nature and it's amazing. If you yourself are not constantly cultivating self-awareness, self-love, and sacred relationship in your own life, starting with you, how on earth do you think you're going to create it? The new political, economic, and social structures that we all long for and envisage and want to create on this earth to replace those that are crumbling, how do you think you're going to do it if you do not have the capacity to meet yourself in awareness, warts and all, shadows and all, traumas and all? You won't be able to, I won't be able to, we won't be able to. So the gifts and the skills of sacred relating are fundamental to creating the new earth, right? And I truly do believe, and this is why I'm so committed to this path of Tantra and sacred relating and sacred sexuality, is that when each and every one of us is able to embody that, is embodying that, the Namaste to self, the Namaste to other, then there cannot be war. It would be impossible. It would be impossible to be violent to another when you are embodying that true Namaste. When you're fully cognizant of your divinity at all times and in union with that, it would be impossible. Enforcing medical procedures on people, talking about them in derogatory ways, would be impossible. So it's very relevant to now. This is not some ideal, airy-fairy idea. It's very relevant, more relevant than ever to this moment in time. Final thing I want to say is about sacred sexuality, because I haven't spoken too much about that, but that is very definitely a part of sacred relationship. So as I said before, in the workshop and in the teachings around this, it is about everything. It's about every single relationship. But then when we come to intimate relationship, to romantic or sexual relationship, how fundamentally important it is there to bring in the sacred, to bring in the practices of Tantra which enable us to experience in the body in a union between masculine and feminine, so that we become whole, so that we become sovereign in an embodied way, energetically, spiritually, right? And then to be able to meet a partner in that sexually. So that sexuality includes all of us, and so that sexuality expands all of us, and so that the full potential, orgasmically, sexually, spiritually, can be experienced either with self or with another in love making. Making love, love making through sacred sexual intimacy. Most of us on the planet right now are experiencing about that much of what is possible sexually with one another. You know, what is possible is so vast and so expanded and so beyond what we typically know and experience and adhere to and stick to for our whole lives. There is so much more. And the more we live and experience sex as sacred, the more we each of us blossom in our consciousness, the more love we bring into the world, the more beauty we create, the more harmonious our energy field in our relationship, in our community, in our world. So sacred lovemaking is such a divine blessing. And that is a fundamental part of this teaching too. I feel to end there this morning. As I've ended there, I'm really feeling the energy of all of that within my body and my heart, and it's really beautiful to feel. So just come with me, bring your hands to your heart and just tune in and feel the vibration, feel the resonance, feel the energy of sacred lovemaking. Sacred love, sacred relating, aligned with God, Goddess as one, seeing the divine in all others, starting with yourself, and just letting that beautiful, joyous, loving, ecstatic energy fill your whole body. Fill your whole energy field and let it nourish you and radiate out from you. So thank you for watching and being with me today. The Living Shakti Awake program is starting this month, January 2022. 2 strands. The Evolutionary Sisters Circle is starting next Wednesday, the 12th of January. A closed group of women journeying together. The second strand is a series of 9 workshops. And the workshop I've been talking about today is the 5th workshop in a sequence of 9. And it's part of the second semester where the theme is people, purpose and planet, and marrying the sacred with these very mundane aspects of our lives. I'll put the information below, or you'll find the link here somewhere. And if you've got any questions at all, please reach out. Yeah, I'd love to interact with you. Thank you for being here. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.